Welcome everyone. This year is being live streamed on Radio Free Nachlaot, as it will be hopefully every Monday. Everyone is welcome to attend the class in person or be watching it wherever you are in the world. Okay, so I always start with a little singing. Very easy nigun. Hopefully you'll pick it up. It's one of those nigunim that came down on Shabbos. So I had to sing it the whole Shabbos. Because every hour or two I had to, do I remember it? And I kept on singing until right after I could get my trusty MP3. Could someone pass me a cup of water, please? Okay, tonight we're learning Parshat LECH-LECHA. And last week we mentioned that one of the most important understandings of the Torah is how everything is archetypal. And the Torah is full of models and paradigms. And this is so key to understanding. There's a very, very important Mamar Chazal from the sages. It says, Ma'aseh Avot Siman Labanim. The actions of our forefathers, the patriarchs and the matriarchs, are a sign to the children. And this is brought down many, 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 many times. And it really begins this week with the story of Avraham. And the idea is that everything that happens to Avraham and Sarah is happening in every generation and to every individual. and it's happening to the whole nation. One of the primary examples in this parsha, this is not the main thing I want to talk about, but I want to give an example of what does it mean the actions of the fathers are a sign for the children. In this parsha, and we'll go back over this, Avraham and Sarah come to the land of Israel, and there is a famine. And they go down to Egypt, and while they're in Egypt, Sarah is taken to Paro's house. God sends a plague on Paro's house, and Paro then sends Avram and Sarah out of Egypt with great riches, and they come back to Israel. So we see this is the exact model of what happened to the nation at the time of Yaakov, when there's a famine and the brothers go down to Egypt, and eventually they settle there and were taken as slaves by Paro, and then God sends 10 plagues, and then were sent out of Egypt with great wealth. The exact same model. This is one of the classic examples of Ma'aseh Avot Siman Labanim. Chaim l'chaim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol nidiyah mivro. So, if we're starting the story of Avram and Sarah, so really there are many, many, many different models and paradigms and archetypes here. We could do a whole class and a whole study on faith. The model of faith is given over in this parsha and in the oral tradition. We could look at chesed. Avram was called a chariot of chesed. We could look at leadership and see how Avram and Sarah are a paradigm of leadership. And of course, these are all true, but there's only so much you can do in 1 hour. So I want to pick one paradigm and kind of follow it through the parsha and see what we can do with it. And then I want to weave into it different teachings from Rav Shlomo on this parsha. For those who don't know, there's a new book out on the first 6 parshas, according to Rav Shlomo. Okay, so the paradigm that I'd like to get into is taken from the name of the parsha. Now, this is the first time that God speaks to Avram. Now, Avram was already introduced in the end of last week's parsha, but fairly briefly. And most of what we know about Avraham is not in the Torah itself. It's from the oral tradition. So here, Avram is 75 years old, and God is speaking to him for the first time. And the first thing he says to him is, Lech-LECHA me'artzecha. Go out of your land, umimolatecha, and your birthplace, ubeit avicha, and your father's house, el ha'oretz asher areka, to the land that I will show you. So this is the first thing that God says to Avram, so it must be very important. So we're going to look at this, and we're going to see a theme here, and then we're going to see it weave itself through the rest of the parsha. So the first thing that's pointed out by everyone, countless commentaries, is Lech-LECHA are the exact same letters. Lech means go. Lecha means either for yourself or to yourself, in a literal sense. Many times when they translate it, it just says go. But it literally means lech-lecha. Go for yourself or to yourself. If you look at the next few verses, and especially Rashi's commentary, he would have it go for yourself. That's how Art Scroll translates it. Go for yourself. Because God says, I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. So it sounds like God is, in a sense, trying to convince Avraham, like, this is good for you. This is good for you. And Rashi follows up on that idea. But others translate it even more literally, go to yourself. So here we see that the command is actually paradoxical or two directional. Because lech means to go out, lecha means to go in. So God is telling Avram here, and we're going to develop this. We're just trying to lay the framework here. Is that you have a two-tiered journey ahead of you. There's one journey of going out, and there's another journey of going in. And we'll see that Avram became a master at both of them. Most people in this world can barely do either one of those. But usually someone is like, let's say, a master of affecting the outside world, but is a mess on the inside. And other people are very, very centered and at peace, but have a hard time affecting the world. And then there are people who can do both. So here the first thing that God is telling him is that it's not one or the other. It's got to be both. Yes. In Yiddish it's in Welt, the Oiswelt. To be in the world and out of the world at the same time. They say about the Baal Shem, he was able to carry on a normal conversation with people and at the very same time be doing Kabbalistic unifications in his mind at the same time. Like his head was like way up there, but he was totally with whoever he was talking with. He was totally focused, but he was able, now they call it being multitasking. He was able to multitask. So Reb Shlomo says like this, if this is the first time that God is speaking to Avram, as we said, it's obviously very important. And what he's telling him on the deepest level is like the secret of life, the secret of spiritual attainment. The secret of the Jewish people is the ability to move, to progress, to go, to do. This is the first thing Avram is told. LECH-LECHA. You have to go very deep inside of yourself, and you have to go into the world and affect the world. Now, in Kabbalah, this concept of being able to go out and in and out, is called Ratzo V'Shov, running and returning. This is taken from a verse in the vision of Ezekiel, when he sees the chariot, the divine chariot, and he sees angels running and returning. And so Chassidut develops this idea, and actually in my Chumash book, I bring it up many times because it's a paradigm that fits just so many different circumstances. First of all, we see nature works according to Ratzo V'Shov. That the pulse of energy, the pulse of electricity, the heartbeat, our breath, the tides, the way the seasons change, AC/DC, positive, negative. It's all Ratzo V'Shov. It's all this dynamic action of back and forth, back and forth. Poetically, it's called the dance of life. And this is God's first communication to Avraham. He's telling him the secret of life. Why is he telling him the secret of life? So Reb Shlomo brings, if anyone wants to see it, it's the first Torah in May Shaloch, from the Ishbitzer. And he begins the way that the Zohar begins, by quoting a verse that says, Ki etzech mayim el tzameh v'nozlin al yabasha. God is saying that He will pour water on those who are thirsty and running water on dry land. So the Zohar begins, and the Mei Shaloch begins by saying Avram was thirsty to know God. He was like hungry to know God. And that's why God is speaking to him now. Is because God just doesn't speak to people. Like you have to make yourself a worthy vessel. I mean, there are times in the Torah that God does speak to people who are not worthy vessels, but the idea here is that Avram went looking for God. And everyone asks, why did God pick Avram? In the text, it does not tell us. Only through the oral tradition do we have any idea. If you read the text, you have no idea why did God pick Avram of all people. And the oral tradition tells us that some say from the time he was 3 years old, he was questioning. He was seeking. Others say he was older. But he was looking for answers. And not just superficial answers. He was like thirsty. So that's why the Zohar begins with this verse, that for those who are thirsty, God will give water.
Where is this verse from?
Write me and I'll tell you. I didn't write it down. Email me and I'll tell you. Or go to word search on our website and look up Mayim or Tzameh, and there'll probably be hundreds, but you'll have to sift through it. But if not, write me and I'll send you. So here, God is like, He's not just saying, go to the land that I will show you. He's telling him something much deeper here. He's telling him like the deepest secret of spiritual attainment is this idea of LECH-LECHA. Now, a beautiful thing is, for those who like gematrias, Ratzo V'Shov equals Torah. Running and returning equals Torah. So this idea, even though sometimes it might appear, or some people think that the Torah is written in stone, it's black and white, there's no movement, there's no, it's like all set. It's not true at all. The Torah is totally dynamic. That's why 3,700 years later, we're having a class about Avraham Avinu and poring over the same words that have been poured over in every generation, and because there's always something new to say. There's some new insight. And even if we learned it all last year, well, we're different this year. We're different people. So the way I'm going to hear it this year is not the way I heard it last year. So there's another famous verse, and this is from Yeshayahu, which is Kol Hoy Kol Tsameh Lechu Lamayim. Hoy is like wake up everyone. Anyone who's thirsty, let them go to the water. So you just say, you need a Navi to tell me that? You're thirsty? Give me some water. Yeah. So it's explained in the Gemara, Ein Mayim Ela Torah. There's no water other than Torah. Meaning that any time that water is mentioned in the text, it's a hint to Torah. Because Torah is called Mayim Chaim, living waters. So it's explained, anyone who's thirsty, let them go to the Torah. So it's brought down in Chassidut that this, we're going to call this an aside. This could truly be an entire class. But for those who were here last week, we learned an amazing meditation on the reality of this world, from the physical to the spiritual. And if you remember,